What if we don't die? Maybe life isn't just about survival. What if it's about growth? I'm Brough. I'm a psychic medium, and I've been doing professional readings for nearly 18 years. I'm here to demystify the mystical. So my guest today is Dr. Mishlove, one of the very few people who has a diploma in parapsychology. You'd think that more people would have diplomas in parapsychology, but there seems to be a taboo in the scientific field around people who want to research this field of paranormal activity. And that taboo is what gets in the way of most legitimate scientists pursuing it. One of the things we cover in this interview is we address the skeptic question, which is the difference between actually being objective and looking into a phenomena versus shutting it down. A true skeptic is someone who investigates things, whereas a false skeptic, or a cynic as I call them, or you could also call them septic, they just shut it down because they believe that nothing like this is possible. So they have a foregone conclusion versus actually investigating a phenomena. Well, first of all, thank you very much for coming on my show, Dr. Mishlove. You are a clinical psychologist who has given yourself to parapsychology and a host of a web series called Thinking Aloud, which I've been binge watching for about 2 months now, my whole summer basically. So I want to just welcome you to the show, and I first wanted to ask you, for my viewers, to define parapsychology.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. Parapsychology is a science. It is the scientific study of extrasensory perception, which includes telepathy, clairvoyance, and precognition, as well as psychokinesis, or mind over matter, which also includes psychic healing, and also the question of survival after death, and that would include reincarnation as well.
That's a great, small explanation for such a massive field, because you just brought up like 10 different branches of it. So it's kind of like as far as science, it's like medicine, in that there's so many different areas of medicine and areas of things you can study. So how does one become a parapsychologist? Because you start as a clinical psychologist, and
actually I got a doctoral degree in parapsychology.
Wow.
That's how I started, and that was unique. It remains today, even almost 40 years later, the only doctoral diploma that says parapsychology ever awarded by an accredited university anywhere in the world. So it's tough. If you want to be a parapsychologist, there are very few venues available.
Well, that's true, isn't it? I run into a similar thing with people asking me, so how do you become a psychic? Like, where did you get your degree? And I'm like, well, in my field, it's really weird because there's no degree, there's no any sort of regulation around it. Yeah. And I often refer to serious practicing mediums who have ethics, in a sense, as being pioneers, because what were doctors before we had doctors, before there was a university or an academia? So I think of it like a budding field, and I really, it's just been so relieving for me to meet people like you in my exploration of this, because you guys actually help explain what the heck's happening to me.
That's right, yeah.
Which is really important. The great Victor Zammit, the retired lawyer from Australia who wrote the book A Lawyer Presents the Case for the Afterlife, told me when I was very young, about 14, he said to me in an email, make sure you do all of the homework you can to figure out the history of psychics and scientific research of the paranormal, and understand who you are, because you will encounter someone like James Randi one day, and you're going to have to be able to have a good answer for him. At least to hold your own, and I've lived by that. So that's my journey of exploration. So what would you, first of all, I should ask, do you ever address the idea of skeptics in a serious manner? Have you written papers on them, or have you ever gotten into a debate with one?
Yes, in fact, it happens frequently. The debates happen frequently, and on my video channel, New Thinking Aloud, there are many discussions with researchers in parapsychology as to how they address the whole question of skepticism, because you've got some skeptics who are sincere scientists. A true philosophical skeptic is a person, frankly, who questions themselves first and foremost. Then you have a group of people who just find this field impossible. And in a sense, they're not true skeptics. They're already committed to a belief that this is impossible, and therefore anybody who makes a claim of a paranormal event of any sort at all is either a fool or a liar. And so they start, and you could say that they are the true believers. But they'll point a finger at you and say, no, everything that you say is tainted because you're the true believer.
Right. They're the true believer that nothing like this is possible. And that's a foregone conclusion. And it's almost like the more evidence you try to present to them, the more walls they'll throw up. Like I've been speaking with some skeptical young people lately. Dave Packman, who has a series on Netflix, and he's kind of a really popular vlogger, I guess you could say. And he's got like a radio podcast kind of thing going on, and he's broached the topic of psychics and the paranormal on occasion. He's mostly a political pundit, but he goes into this territory, and I enjoy his work. So I wrote out to him as a fan, and I said, look, like here are papers from Dean Radin, and here are Victor Zammit and things. And he just, within 5 minutes, emailed back saying, oh, Dean Radin's never had anything published or anything, credible come out off of his name. I'm like, you couldn't have read what I sent you in that time, first of all. But it's just this wall that comes up because it's like they have to protect their version of reality.
And since they already are convinced that there's not that this is completely impossible, they feel no need to acquaint themselves with the actual literature.
Well, that's exactly right. And they use a tactic on me, and I don't fall for it. But a lot of psychics I know do fall for it. They'll invite you on their show or their radio program, and they'll tell you on air, or they'll ask you on air to tell them what their grandfather's name is. Mm. And my answer is, well, what the heck makes you think your grandfather's here right now to tell me his name anyway? Mm. And you have to also factor in that in some readings as a medium, I'll see names and details, and in another reading, there are no such names come up for that person. Mm. And it's different information, and the medium's not in control. So it's a little like asking a musician to play you your favorite song without the band, or a surgeon to go into surgery without the OR. It's like people have to know what it is and how it works before they can test it properly. Mm-hmm. And that takes me back to your work and in the field, which, so you've written a book that it's the next thing on my reading list. I think it's called A PK Man.
That's correct.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
Sure. Well, I engaged in a 10-year study of a man named Ted Owens, who occasionally called himself the PK Man. PK is the abbreviation parapsychologists use for psychokinesis, or mind over matter. And during that 10-year period, he wanted nothing more than to interest scientists in his abilities. So he'd send out letters to various scientists, including myself, saying, he would say, I intend to produce a large-scale demonstration of psychokinesis. It might be a cold spell in the middle of summer, or a hot spell in the middle of winter, or he might try to end a drought or affect a hurricane or a volcano, or a large-scale power blackout, or UFO sightings, or a combination of these things. And then he'd be sending in newspaper clippings saying, look, see, it happened, just as I said. On one occasion, he sent a message like this to Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ, who had a parapsychology research program going on at a big military industrial think tank called SRI International. And they were having a drought in California at the time. He said, I'm going to end the drought, and you'll know it's me because your local newspaper in a few days will publish a story saying the drought is over, but there's going to be my trademarks. You're going to see every kind of weather: lightning, hail, rain, snow, sleet. And power blackouts, and UFO sightings. And within a few days, all that happened. So Russell Targ sent him a message saying that was a great prediction. And he wrote back and said that was not a prediction. I caused it. And at that point, because they were getting funding from the CIA back in those days, so they didn't want to have anything more to do with him because he was what they regarded him as a loose cannon. They wanted to operate in a very low-key way, and they were already working with Israel's great psychic Uri Geller, who was controversial enough. So they asked me to kind of take over the case.
Yeah.
I was an eager young graduate student at the time, so I took the file off of their hands and worked with him for 10 years until he died in 1987. And it took me until the year 1999 to actually publish the book about him, because all the things that he did were so bizarre and so amazing, people couldn't believe it was true. The first edition of this book we sent to an editor, and he said, well, it's not a good novel. He couldn't believe it was nonfiction.
Right. Oh yeah. Now I'm really excited. This is going to be a great book. So psychokinesis is the idea. It's different from what I do as a medium, where I'm just channeling discarnates and information about the future and various things. Psychokinesis is when you can use some unseen force to manipulate the environment or objects around you, and possibly other minds too. Is that a fair?
Yes, you could say that telepathy, if you're a telepathic transmission, might be viewed as something akin to psychokinesis. And in fact, that's one of the interpretations of psychic healing, that you're sending the healee a telepathic message to heal themselves, which they then do.
It's fascinating. I'm working on a book with a colleague of mine who scribes, basically. I go into trance, and I'm new at trance, well, the last 3 or 4 years, since 2015. And his cousin in Texas ended up having cancer, and we did a healing on her remotely together. And during the healing, I had heart attack symptoms. It was like I had a full-blown anxiety attack out of the blue. And we didn't tell her that we were doing the healing. And later that morning, he called her and said, so how'd your morning go? She goes, I had the strangest dream this morning. I dreamed that I was on a boat in an ocean, and the waves were like 100 feet tall, and I was you could feel every rise and drop, and she was being clanked around the boat and bumping into the metal edges, and she was like, it hurt. And she woke up from this, and a couple of months later, she's been declared cancer-free. So I can say from some personal experience, it is anecdotal, but these are the kinds of things I've kind of dabbled in. But I don't tell my own clients about this, interestingly. I keep this kind of thing hush, except when I'm talking to someone like you, because it's hard enough for them to get past that you talk to dead people. When you start getting into the realm of affecting the environment and actually being able to reach and touch others with your mind, that's too much for people, I think.
Well, they used to burn witches at the stake for doing that sort of thing. And that was just a few hundred years ago. So there's a lot of, I guess you'd say, subconscious fear in the culture around psychic functioning.
So that's what you confront with this job as a parapsychologist. And I was thinking about it this morning before talking to you. I was like, well, how would I define it? And it's definitely got to be a vocation, because it's like teachers and police officers. Those jobs take a tremendous amount of personal sacrifice and commitment, and they don't really pay very well. And a parapsychologist gets paid even less than them. Right?
Well, I suppose it depends on your particular circumstances. A number of people who work in the field of parapsychology are college professors. So
that's true.
They're probably doing okay. Other people finance their research through grants and so on. But you're correct. By and large, people working in the field of parapsychology do it because they have a passion for it. Right. The work is its own reward.
So you and I know that this work and the implications of it have massive societal, potentially big societal impact, and it could. I see it as something that could potentially even start to turn the tides and end war and various major social issues that we still confront in the 21st century. You'd think that more people would know about accredited people like yourself with credentials who can actually, present information from these expeditions and explorations you've gone on, and more people should be reading your book, and more people should be watching Thinking Aloud. But this is why I'm doing this show. It's because they're not. The general public doesn't seem to have really sunken their teeth into this the way that I assume that they would. And I wondered if you had any views on what that phenomena is, like what the heck's going on there.
Well, as I view it, Brough, that's how you pronounce your name, Brough?
It's Brough, but
Brough.
You did better because a lot of people go Brough. So UGH is silent, yeah.
Well, the way I see things, it's this. You've got a big section of the population, let's say 30%, who are very religious, and they think that parapsychology is real. However, it's diabolic. So you need to avoid it unless it has the blessing of your particular church or religion. Then you've got another 30% of the population who are materialistic, atheistic, scoffers and skeptics. They think it's all phony. And then so you've got a large group in the middle, actually. In fact, the truth is that roughly 2/3 of the population have had psychic experiences themselves. So they're mildly open to it. But in academia, in places where people, for example, could offer research grants in government and academia, in businesses, it doesn't matter how interested you are, because the small group of people who are avid skeptics and avid religionists who think that this is evil will use horse laughs and other kinds of attacks to threaten your career. So, I mean, consider this. I have a doctoral diploma in parapsychology I got 38 years ago, and it's still the only one ever awarded in the world. There's this huge social pressure not to acknowledge parapsychology. But I will say this, and it's very important. In 1969, the Parapsychological Association formally became affiliated with the American Society, or the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the major scientific body here in the United States. And that was a big step forward, so that I think it's fair to say officially parapsychology is acknowledged as a science.
Well, that's really key, and that's really, really important. And I'm so glad to have you explain all of this, because, like I said, the layman, and it's surprising to me we still have so many of them, will really appreciate this. And I keep, every time I do this show, I keep seeing to myself this young, maybe it's a couple of young people, young boys and girls, maybe they're between 14 to 16, who are going to see this, and it's going to alter the direction of their lives. And they're going to join the ranks with you and myself and Dean Radin and Russell Targ and all of the big leagues, I think. And it's going to start to spearhead this into the 21st century officially. So that's really really kind of cool for me. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to wrap up talking a bit about this new obsession of mine, Thinking Aloud, which is your web series that you do, and you're putting out quite a lot of content, I notice, because I'm never bored. There's always something new to see and things I've missed on the channel. So do you want to tell people briefly about that and how to get to it?
Oh, okay. There are actually 2 channels on YouTube. The original Thinking Aloud series includes videos that were broadcast all over North America via satellite to public television stations between 1987 and 2002. Then there's the new Thinking Aloud channel, and that's ALLOWED, New Thinking Aloud. It's all one word. You can go to newthinkingaloud.com. And those are videos that I have created in the last 3 years, just about the same period of time that you've been working as a medium. And I've actually uploaded hundreds of videos on that channel covering every aspect of parapsychology and related fields with many of the leading researchers. It's really a resource for people who are hungry for valid, accurate information regarding scientific parapsychology.
And you're such a great host that you make it so easily digestible.
Well, thank
to anybody. And that's really important, because I think a lot of what you like, what's cool about your channel is you don't just talk about psychics and the afterlife. You go into UFOs, you go into social constructs and all kinds of fascinating things, which I've naturally found myself gravitating toward in the last 2 years or so, being interested in society and culture even, because I think there's some shifting going on there too.
And philosophy is a big topic. We covered the mind-body problem, for example, is really central to understanding psychic functioning.
Okay, the mind-body problem. Can you paraphrase that for us, please?
Yeah, it's one of the oldest unresolved problems in all of philosophy. And to put it in a nutshell, it's this: how is it possible for the brain and nervous system that are composed of dead, lifeless atoms and molecules to produce consciousness and life? There's nothing about inert matter that suggests that consciousness should exist. So how is that at all possible? And when you add to that the research on extrasensory perception, that human consciousness is capable of receiving information from distant locations in space and even from the future, it begins to suggest that there are many things about human consciousness itself that are inconsistent with the modern materialistic scientific paradigm. And the reason I think that parapsychology is such a marginalized field is because the findings of parapsychology suggest that we have to take a fresh look at really basic things like time and space and matter and energy and consciousness. We really have to think these things through freshly.
Nobody wants to rewrite the books, I guess.
Well, there are a lot of very bright minds working on these questions, and I think that what is coming together is a whole new vision of reality in which spirituality and science are coming together and actually are coming up with a unified, consistent vision of things. But it's a slow process.
Well, that's it. And one thing that I've learned lately, now that I'm no longer in my 20s, that decade when you know everything, is that it's not necessary to throw out the entire rule book. Maybe some things just need a little modification, and some branches need to be added to the books originally. And you had actually brought this up on your show recently. I can't remember who you were quoting, but you said that in the field of parapsychology and studying these phenomena, we can't think of things even in decades. We need to more measure them by centuries, right? So it's kind of like Christopher Columbus confirming that the Greeks were right, that the world was round, but that was like 600 years prior we had that knowledge that the world was round. It takes that long for the whole world to agree it's round, which, by the way, as we know, is now in debate again by a few people. So I could imagine maybe this is a 200-year project at least.
Well, that was a quote from William James, who is one of my heroes, the founder of American psychology and one of America's great philosophers and thinkers who had a deep interest in questions like survival after death. And yes, he said it's because the field is so profound in its implications, not to mention poorly funded, that progress is very, very slow in the field, but very real. Now, the research in this area began in 1882 with the founding of the Society for Psychical Research in London. So at this point, there's an enormous database, hundreds of scientific articles. And I'll tell you something very encouraging, Brough. Just last month, the American Psychological Association published an article about parapsychology in their flagship journal, the American Psychologist, a review of all of the meta-analyses of hundreds of studies in parapsychology, and it resulted in very, very strong statistics and positive conclusions. And this is the first article in parapsychology published in that journal for about 50 years. So I regard it as a very important landmark, especially because psychologists are the professional group that's probably the most threatened by the research in parapsychology. So for them to come out and acknowledge the validity of all of this research, I think the paper actually covers the findings of some 1,600 studies, published studies in refereed scientific journals. To me, that's an important milestone and potentially a turning point.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I heard about that, and of course Dr. Radin, who was on my first episode, also mentioned that particular landmark. So what a perfect thing to wrap up with, and I hope we get to do this again, and I look forward to our future friendship or collaboration or whatever. I'll just beam it to you.
Very good, bro.
Okay, have a great day.
You too.
One of the things Dr. Mishlove pointed out was that the American Psychological Association recently published a review of all the past parapsychological research that's been done. One of my first guests, Dr. Dean Radin, also mentioned this. So you can tell amongst the scientific community there is a stir going on, and we're starting to see that scientists who have studied this stuff for 30 plus years are finally getting their just due. So in today's reading with Ashley, we have some interesting paranormal activity. I want you to pay close attention to the part of the reading where I mentioned to her that I see her father manipulating electronic devices, making lights flicker. Something my producer noted was that our own equipment was flickering and having technical troubles. Now, keep in mind, we film several readings a day, and this hadn't happened before her reading or after, so it's very interesting.
I want to know if he's at peace and if he knew that he was going to pass away and that's why he sent everyone home. And does he look after or look over Dylan and Carson? And if he approves of my current relationship because he never got to meet him. And if there's anything that he wants like my siblings to know or me to know.
I never know what kind of a reading I'm going to get on a person. Sometimes it's more about your life, and sometimes it's about dead people who you've lost, people that you loved and cherished who are now in the spirit world. Sometimes it's a bit of both. And with you, there's a woman behind you who's quite maternal in her energy. She seems to be she might be a grandmother, I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet, but she shows me the symbol of cancer, which could infer that she herself passed from it, or that one of her beloved family members that is also with her has passed. Might be a bit of both, because I'm getting twice, 2 people or 2 different cancer passings. Can you relate to any of that right away? Mm-hmm. Okay. Would this be like a mother or a grandmother to you?
A grandmother.
The D initial seems important in the family around her. Would she relate to a D or have a grandchild with a D?
My older sister's name starts with a D.
Is it like Diane or D-A?
It's Danielle.
Danielle, D-A-N, okay. Are we thinking of your mom's mom?
Yeah.
Because I feel like she's very excited for you today. She's here to support you doing this. I don't know if there's another family member. There might be someone else that'll come through. I'm not sure. I feel like you actually thought about her recently, or you would expect her to show up in the reading today, among other things. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it's not a surprise that Nana would be here. She's like, she always protects. She's telling you how beautiful you are. You know, you're an exceptionally gorgeous, but also. She says she looks beautiful now, like she's her younger self. Your mom's side's a good-looking people on your mom's side, eh?
Yeah. Yeah,
your dad would agree, I think. But I get the feeling of a man in the spirit world as well. Okay. He died too soon, I feel like. We lost him before his time is what we would determine. Now that to me means he didn't make it to or through the age of 60 on some level. I go like right in my chest. I don't know if it's a heart attack or if it's something else. But I'm getting pressure there. Does that make any sense to you, my love?
Yep.
Okay, let me see who this is. Let me just let him come through. Your grandmother's like kicking him. Go on, go on, go on. Get his attention. Now's your chance. She's coaxing him on. Good old Nana. My loves, my loves, my loves, my daughters. He's making me feel like he has kids on Earth, alive. More girls than boys? Does he have like 3 kids, like 2 girls, a son or something like this?
Yeah, 3 girls.
Oh, 3 girls. Okay. You might be like the son in the sense, like you might be
He has a son too.
Oh, he has a son somewhere else? Okay. Are they all, is it half sibling? Like, is it a mix?
Nope, there's 3 girls and 1 boy.
Because he really stands out. He's like a sore thumb, this son. Could this be your dad, I'm getting?
Yeah.
He's here. Oh, he loves you, hun.
He was 50 years old, and he was super stubborn and loved to fish and was set in his ways. And he was just a good dad.
Why does he make my chest feel tight? What happened at the end of his life, love?
His heart stopped pumping.
Yeah, but he had been sick for a while, I feel. I'm gonna take these off. I don't even use my eyes for this anyway. Why do I need glasses? He's here, love. You know he's been coming to you in your dream visits. Like, you'll have a dream once a year, and he'll show up. He'll look radiant. He'll be youthful. His mouth will barely move, but you hear him talk. And that's his way of coming. Your mom will get that too. And then don't tell your sisters and your brother. They'll get jealous because they don't get those as much. But you're more in tune psychically. You're creative. You know, I don't know if you work on people or if you've worked in media, but I feel like you're very creative with your abilities, and that also lends itself to natural psychic ability. Because it's the same creative part of the mind that is utilized by spirit to show visions to psychics, so he can link with you that way. Do you remember any dreams from him?
No, I had one very bad dream about him, like probably a year ago, and that's it.
That was a grief-laden dream. But you're going to start to get him in your dreams. He's trying to project through. He'll come through closer to Christmas. Like I feel November would be when he might make it through to you. He's still learning. We only lost him 2 or 3 years ago?
2 years ago.
It's not been that long. I feel like we're only in the 3rd year. Would May be important to him or to you? The month of May.
The last time I seen him was the month of May.
Okay, that was the last time you actually sat with him or talked to him in person. Did you go to lunch or something? Were you eating?
I was up at his trailer.
Okay, because I wanted to say I wanted to be eating something.
He always wanted to be eating something.
Okay. Ooh, he's revving a Harley or an engine of a motorcycle to me, and he wants you to think of him riding free. He's riding free right now. He's happy, happy, happy. And I think these are his words, not mine. Happy as a pig in
Yeah.
Yeah. Did he lose his bike? Did he not get to have it later in life?
No, he didn't.
Yeah, because he loved it, eh? You know, I think in some ways your mom was the love of your dad's life, but I think that your dad, let's say he had to grow up with you. He had to grow up at the same time you did, not necessarily with you, but he had a lot of growing to do in his life on Earth, he's telling me. And he makes me feel like it sometimes made relationships with him like sandpaper, fraught. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And he wants you to know, but you always see the beauty and the best of him. By the way, you could use that if you need it, sweetheart. You always see the beauty and the best of him. A lot of people love that man. Doesn't mean they knew how to handle him. He seasoned out as he was older. But does this make sense for an important chapter of his life?
Very much, yes.
Yeah. But it's all water under the bridge now. Like, he's made good on all of his relationships, he makes me feel. I'm just asking him if he can give me his name or initial, but there's a lot of spirit people buzzing about today, so it's a bit hard for me to hear him, but we'll see if I can get his name. Are you not the oldest? Are you somewhere in the middle of the kids?
Yeah.
Like second to oldest or something?
I'm third to oldest.
Oh, okay, but is your brother below you?
No, ahead of me.
Ahead? Okay, it's interesting because he puts some responsibility on you, and he shows me that you're one of the few who understood him. You understood him. I feel like a sister of yours, and I feel like a brother, like 2 of the 4 of you needed to do a lot more forgiveness and homework with your dad in their own hearts. But I feel like they've come to have that now. He was visiting so often at first that he almost was haunting you guys in a funny way. I'm not sure that you in particular would have seen a lot of signs, but someone had to have lights go on and off on them. Someone had to hear footsteps. Someone had to hear him knocking around. I don't think he lived with you guys, but I think he came to where you live. The power lines he's showing me, so something, or the phone, so something with the power of the phone he used to do at first. This was in the first 4 months of his passing. He loves you with all of his heart. You're in his heart. You're part of him. M, he spells M out as well. Is there a Michael or a Matthew that's important to him?
Mark.
Mark, is that like his son or grandson?
It's his stepson.
But he had an important role in Mark's life, yes? Was Mark 11 when he came into the picture?
I think he was like in his teens.
Yeah, maybe your dad's version of that is like, he was around 11. You know how your dad can be? Do you still talk to Mark? Because I feel like there needs to be reconnection.
Yeah.
There's been disconnection, but it's not your fault, but it's like reach out through Facebook or something. Tell him about this. Mark's a good kid. It's a good kid, all in all. I want to say you come from a tough lot. Your family's tough, but they love you. It's like in your family, when we say F you, we say it from the bottom of our hearts.
Yeah.
With all my heart, you. They can bleep that.
Yeah.
That'll be great. My show's going to have bleeps on it. But you love each other, like you'll be there through thick and thin. And he noticed that with his funeral when he was sick, but toward the end, it feels like people came around that hadn't been there for years. People that he thought he was at odds with, and the love was all real. It's just personality that gets in the way down here. You know, and personality is built on so many things. I'm a different person if I'm hungry. You know, no, but seriously, the physical makes your personality change. Who you are in the spirit is real, and that's unchanged, and you get to become your real self when you cross over. And that's your dad. You can think of him now as real. He shows me your love life, and he's putting a light around your love life. Are you in a new phase with a relationship, or a new one?
Yeah.
But it's after he died that you met this young man.
Yeah.
And I feel like he's very proud of you, and I'm hearing bells, church bells. Now that's a good sign, not to put any pressure, because it doesn't look like you're at that phase yet.
Yeah.
But this feels different than the other relationships you've had, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You changed before you met him, and it made you ready for it. Because I don't know if you've said these words, but it's like he's not who you would have gone for 12 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's not because he's actually good looking. It's not that. It's that he's maybe gentler than you're used to. Maybe you didn't know they made them in that model.
Yeah.
But you have a connection that's real, and it feels like you've known each other before with this new partner of yours. Is there like a Dave or a Dan, a Dave name in the family relation somewhere? Dan or Dave? I get
Dan is my dad.
Because I thought, as I'm asking him for his name, I thought he'd come through with it. So know that your dad, who's here today, is blessing your love life. That's what he's trying to share with us, which is a new phase for you, because it's been real crappy before this.
Yeah.
Your love life was, you almost were like, maybe I'm going to just be a nun instead or something.
Yeah.
No, but he keeps saying this. You learned from your past to change your, like, you can't change other people. They're going to be Nimrods no matter what. Or some of them will grow. But you can work on you. And that's something that you actually worked on this. You changed and worked on some of your things, like your temper. You're very angry sometimes. Nobody would guess to see you on camera that you have a temper. But I would not want to be on your bad side. I want you on my side in a fight. You know that about yourself, eh? Mm-hmm. And you can push people away even if they love you when you're upset. That's your motive. You don't hurt people. Oh, you freeze them out. You can do that, really, like you're a glacier. Do you know that about yourself? Mm-hmm. Your daddy knows you, though.
Yep.
And it's like you've worked on changing this, and one of the things that this lovely new relationship does is it lets your walls come down. That's fairly new for you, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, good for you. Well, I give my stamp of approval. Well, your dad does. Who the hell am I? Nobody cares what I think. It's your dad who gives his stamp of approval on this whole thing.
If he approves of my current relationship, because he never got to meet him. And if there's anything that he wants, like, my siblings to know, or me to know.
I'm seeing more for you, and I mean, stranger things have happened. I was going to be a scientist, and now look at me. I mean, so you might find that in 2 years, you might lean toward participating in creating or owning a business. I see it like really, really good for you. And this is your dad's thoughts for you, too. So some of the things I see in a reading are predictions, and we can't argue with those. Oh, he's really proud of your 2 kids. He's like really, and he's smitten with this little boy.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, very smitten with him. Is your son somewhere in the range of 5 now, or was he 5 around the time your dad?
He's 5 right now.
Yeah, because he's showing me like a 5-year-old, and he wants to put him in Spider-Man pajamas. Does he like red and blue, or is it actually Spider-Man that he's into?
He loves Spider-Man.
Yeah, because your dad says Grandpa's with you, and he's putting him in Spider-Man pajamas. Maybe you can get him some Spider-Man pajamas and say it's from his grandpa.
Okay.
Yeah. And your little girl is musical, very musical. He's going to be there when she's dancing and doing acrobatics.
Yeah.
She's quite the little jock for a girl, in a sense, because she's very energetic. Is she a bit younger?
She's older.
Oh, okay. Because your dad always looks at girls like he really loves girls, eh? He's like, my baby, my baby. So has she gotten in her leotards yet and jumped around and done all kinds of gymnastic stuff?
She dances and does gymnastics all the time.
Because he's watching this and he's proud of her. You don't ask anything from their father, but yet you never get in the way of the relationship. You facilitate a good co-parenting. You've had to swallow crow pie there, though. Good for you. You don't ask for anything. You just want your kids to be happy. You're a good mom. I feel like your nan made sure he showed up today. Not that he wouldn't, but he would have had to know that you were doing this, so she went and told him. So both these energies are very strong. Would you say that you had hoped or expected from either of them or both of them?
Both
today?
of them.
Yeah, you had talked about this or wanted this? Yeah. Because they knew, they heard you, and they showed up today for this. Did you just in the last year go through a move with your kids? If the answer's no, it's going to happen.
Yeah, no.
It's going to happen, because I feel like they're picking bedrooms.
They just got their own bedrooms because my sister moved out.
Ah, so the move made them pick their rooms.
Yeah.
Because that's why I thought it was a move, because all I saw was the children picking bedrooms.
Yeah.
Psychic dyslexia over here. But that's what I see. Okay, and so now they all have settled in and nestled in and got their rooms. That's great. It's possible you may still move in a year, but But let's leave that as, for now we'll say it's because they got their rooms. Well, and your sister moved, so your dad sees all this, eh? You know, that's how I know. I don't know this stuff from anything other than the communicators. I'm nothing without the spirit people. Have you painted a wall a really bold color, like a rusty red or a mud kind of clay red? Have you done any of that yet?
No.
It might be near a hall or near your bedroom. It's earth. It fits with earth tones. You know, like if you have any like crisp white curtains and linens and green, like sage greens and things. Like a clay red is like a beautiful pop to make a space intimate, because there's too much white going on. There's no color, and you're full of color. So you're going to do something with your space like that. Now it could be in this home, or it could be connected to the move I was sensing. So we'll have to wait and see, I suppose, about a year. I feel like a year after April. So I would just, maybe it's over a year, maybe it's like 2020, April in 2020. I get the sense that it's a symbol that your relationship will be going well. Because then you kind of start over together, you know what I mean? It could look like that. Very nice, very nice. He's very proud of you. He just sees these kids growing, and he sees you doing these amazing things. He's so proud of you. You've done better than a lot of your family. And that's not to put you on a pedestal, and it's not to talk bad about your family, but you've worked hard. And you are inspiring people. You're inspiring your sisters. You're inspiring your brother. You are a good example. And you didn't start off that way. You've had to work at it. Does this make some sense to you?
Yeah.
How you feel, and you try to be a good example to your family out of love, not out of spite, not out of judgment. You really want to be like, hey guys, look what we can do when we, you know, mop the floor and get our act together and work hard a little bit here and aspire for a better life. Your father's like, you go girl, go get him. That's how he is. He's very proud of you. All a parent could want is for their children to do 50 to 100% better than they did. That's all they could want. And that's what makes spirit people proud. That's what makes them happy. You are their heaven, because you can show them that what they did was good. And that's what you do every day. And that makes them very happy. The only ticked off spirit people I've ever met are people whose families are squabbling over stupid things like material stuff. Money or land or stupid stuff. That doesn't matter to the spirit people. Even if it mattered while they were alive, they shed that. They don't care now when they die. Because you know you can't keep any of it. Can't even keep your body. This thing's for rent. In my case, it's like, thank God. But you know what I mean? Like, that's what they feel. And you know, there are some disgruntled ghosts, but those aren't spirit people. Those are just people who are homeless until they find themselves again, until they wake up. But spirit people are the people in the spirit world, and they're never upset. When they are, it's not quite the same way you'd think. It's just more like disappointment. Like, come on, people, get your act together. So that's why he's proud of you, big time. Oh, good old Danny boy. I don't know if he was one of, like, 7, but he's, like, got a cluster with him. Well, not necessarily with him, but he's part of a family that feels like a cluster. How many are there? Why do I see 7?
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There is 7 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm psychic.
Yeah.
Who would have thought it? But that's what he says. We're one of 7 over there. And he feels like he wants to send love to his whole clan. Are only 3 of them, including him, up in spirit?
There isn't any of his siblings up in spirit.
Okay. Maybe he was part of a group of 3. Like, you know how you can have a few kids and then a gap with age? Like, maybe he's a cluster of 3 he's sharing with me.
He is a cluster.
Yeah. Because he's like, tell them all that I love them, that I'm okay. I just felt him kiss your temple, like he leaned in and kissed your temple. Now it's very hot here with all the lights, but if you felt any coolness on your right side, that would be him. Are there any other questions that you have for him?
Does he send me any signs?
Other than the dreams, he's not big on the signs yet.
Okay.
He's still working that out. But I want you to write a card to him at Christmas and put it in the tree.
Okay.
And leave it open. He'll read it every year. And in the card, you can ask him to ring the doorbell or make the lights flicker. He's going to be good with electronics when he does give you signs.
Okay.
Yeah. He's good at fiddling with technical things. You'll see. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm glad he didn't ruin our lights or anything, because we don't want to interrupt the shoot. But he's otherwise that's how he'll come through. Yes. And today's a sign. Mm-hmm. This is a sign. Yeah. He's never far, hon. It's like they're in the next room. You can call to them. Have you ever had that experience where you haven't seen or heard from a friend in a long time and you think of them suddenly, and then within hours or days you run into them or they call?
Yeah.
Imagine that times 10. Your dad can be in the spirit world gardening, doing whatever he's doing, riding his bike, and suddenly you'll pop into his head and he'll go, why am I thinking of her so much? And he'll come to visit you and realize that you'd been needing him or calling out to him. It's that phenomena, because we're interconnected through the level of mind. Einstein called it spooky phenomena, where one particle can affect another no matter how great the distance. Mm-hmm. It's called quantum physics. This stuff is more like sci-fi than it is about horror movies, you know.
Yeah. My dad coming through, and I was really happy that my grandma came through. Not that she really said much, but that was totally her. She was like trying to kick his butt into coming through, because that's her. And then the stuff that was said about like my dad, it was super cool. It was like super happy to hear from him, because he did die so suddenly. So that was good. Like a sigh of relief almost, that like he's still around, and even though like I don't see signs, or sometimes I like try not to think about it, it's like cool to know that he is around and he's watching the kids. And yeah. So some of the questions that I wrote out was, did he go peacefully? Which he did, and when he was found like he was sleeping. So that was good to know that he was sleeping during that whole thing. Does he approve of my current relationship? He does. So that's refreshing to know, because he never got to meet him. Does he watch over Jalen and Carson? And he does, and he's proud of them, and like he got the kids bang on, like what Jalen likes to do and what Carson likes to do, and then messages for my siblings. He didn't have a strong relationship with them, and my brother and sister definitely grieved with regret after he passed away. So it's good to know that like everyone just needs to let that stuff go and that kind of stuff. So that'll be good for them to know. Thank you for coming through today and giving me a sense of closure and relief and happiness, really.
So after the filming of this episode, Ashley contacted me and let me know that it was the second anniversary of her father's funeral, the day of the reading. In my field of work, it's common that these kinds of synchronicities occur. Something else of note from this reading was Ashley's father allowed me to see a little bit into what he does in the spirit world. I mentioned that no matter where he is or what he's doing, if Ashley's thinking of him or needs him and reaches out emotionally, he'll sense that. Twins, as well as parents and even lovers in this world, have experienced sensing what's going on, or that something's going on with their loved ones somewhere during the midst of a crisis or a major life event. So it's the same phenomena in the spirit world, essentially. Our minds do remain connected to the people that we love.